Married billionaire confessed to black woman at charity gala, just love me tonight. $2 million. Gone. Just like that, Amara whispered, her emerald gown catching the moonlight as she stared out at the San Francisco skyline. Everything I worked for. Why did you do it? Nikolai's voice was raw with emotion, so unlike the cold, calculated businessman she had married on paper. Why would you sacrifice everything for my company? Amara turned, tears glistening in her eyes. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being just business for me. His dark eyes widened as understanding dawned. Amara. Don't, she interrupted, forcing strength into her voice. I know our contract ends in 2 weeks. I've seen the divorce papers on your desk. Nikolai stepped closer, his expression more vulnerable than she'd ever witnessed. Those papers, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out folded documents. Amara's heart sank as he extended them toward her. But instead of asking for her signature, he tore the papers in half. What are you doing? She gasped. His hands, always so steady in boardrooms where billions hung in the balance, trembled as he reached for her. Breaking the only contract I've ever regretted making. I don't understand. Just love me tonight, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant sounds of the gala. And tomorrow. And every day after that. If you can. The night air carried the scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive ambition. Behind them, the charity gala continued in full swing, a testament to the power and wealth that kept San Francisco's elite in their own exclusive orbit. But here on the terrace, time seemed suspended between heartbeats as Nikolai's words hung in the air. Amara searched his face for any sign that this was another calculated business move. Another strategy. Another lie. But all she found was raw vulnerability in the eyes of a man who had built an empire on never showing weakness. How did we get here? She whispered, more to herself than to him. If you've ever found yourself falling for someone you promised yourself you wouldn't, someone completely forbidden, then you know exactly how Amara felt at this moment. Hit subscribe to hear stories of hearts that refuse to follow the rules we set for them, even when we have millions of reasons to keep our distance. 1 year ago, Amara Bailey had been drowning in debt, desperate for a solution as her mother's medical bills mounted higher with each passing day. The experimental treatment that might save her life remained frustratingly out of reach, locked behind a wall of zeros that Amara couldn't climb. Not on a financial analyst's salary, no matter how brilliant her reputation. Her phone vibrated in her clutch, another text from the hospital. Another gentle reminder that time and money were running out simultaneously. Amara ignored it as she had trained herself to do in professional settings. Focus on what you can control, she reminded herself. Right now, that meant nailing this interview at Quantum Dynamics. The sleek glass tower that housed the tech giant's headquarters reflected the morning sunlight with an almost blinding intensity. Amara squinted as she approached, balancing her portfolio case in one hand and a desperately needed caramel macchiato in the other. Her one indulgence before facing what could be the most important interview of her career. You've got this, she muttered under her breath as the automatic doors swept open. Top of your class at Stanford. 3 years at Goldman Sachs. You were made for this job. The atrium soared above her, all polished marble and brushed steel. Quantum Dynamics logo, an elegant stylized atom, rotated slowly on the screens that lined the walls. Amara checked in with reception, received her visitor's badge, and headed toward the elevator bank, mentally rehearsing her opening points. She was so focused on her preparation that she didn't notice the man exiting the executive elevator until it was too late. The collision was spectacular in its completeness. Her coffee exploded between them, creating a Rorschach test of caramel-colored destruction across his immaculate white shirt and her only professional blouse. Perfect, he muttered, dark eyes flashing with irritation. Absolutely perfect timing. Amara froze in mortification, watching coffee drip from what was clearly a bespoke suit onto Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. I'm so sorry, she stammered, fumbling in her bag for tissues, any tissues? I wasn't looking. Clearly. His voice was cold, clipped, with the faintest trace of an accent she couldn't immediately place. She finally extracted a small packet of tissues and offered them uselessly. The damage was beyond their capacity. I'm really very sorry. I can pay for the dry cleaning. The man's eyebrows rose slightly, as if the suggestion was both amusing and absurd. That won't be necessary. He glanced at her visitor's badge. You're here for a meeting? Yes, 14th floor, he interrupted. Amara nodded, wondering if she was about to be escorted from the building before she even had a chance to interview. I suggest you find a bathroom and... He gestured vaguely at the coffee stain spreading across her silk blouse, addressed that first. Without another word, he strode toward a private elevator, leaving Amara standing in a puddle of cooling coffee and shattered hopes. 20 minutes later, with her blouse semi-presentable thanks to some aggressive blotting in the ladies' room, Amara sat in the 14th floor conference room, arranging her materials. The wall of windows offered a spectacular view of the bay, but she barely noticed, focusing instead on calming her nerves. The door opened, and she rose automatically, prepared to greet the financial team she expected to interview with. Instead, she found herself face to face with the man from the lobby. Only now she recognized him from the Forbes cover that had been on her coffee table just that morning. Nikolai Russo, founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics. The man she had just baptized with overpriced coffee. Ms. Bailey. His voice was even colder than before. I see you've recovered from our encounter. Mr. Russo, she managed, her mouth suddenly dry. I want to apologize again for... He waved a dismissive hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. You're here to tell us why our company is bleeding money. I suggest we focus on that rather than your caffeination habits. Amara straightened her spine, professionalism overriding embarrassment. Of course. To her surprise, Nikolai took a seat directly across from her rather than at the head of the table. Several other executives filed in behind him, but it was clear from their deference that this was his show. Impress me, he said simply, folding his hands on the table. Something about his arrogance ignited a spark of defiance in Amara. She was good at her job. Damn good. Coffee incident aside, she didn't need to be intimidated by him or his billions. Your company has a thief, she said without preamble, activating her presentation on the room's display. And they're very, very good. For the next 45 minutes, Amara laid out her preliminary findings, pointing to patterns in Quantum's financial reports that suggested systematic theft at a high level. As she spoke, she watched Nikolai's expression shift from skepticism to focused interest. These discrepancies here, she highlighted a series of transactions, they're small enough individually to fly under the radar. But collectively, over the past 18 months, they amount to approximately $27 million. A murmur ran through the executives present. Nikolai remained silent, his dark eyes fixed on the data. The sophistication of the concealment suggests someone with intimate knowledge of your financial systems and approval processes, Amara continued. Someone highly placed within the organization. You're suggesting an executive-level employee is embezzling from us, Nikolai stated flatly. Amara met his gaze. I'm not suggesting it, Mr. Russo. I'm stating it as fact. The question is which one? The room fell silent. Nikolai studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Congratulations, Ms. Bailey. You've just earned yourself a job. He stood abruptly. You'll work directly with me to find our thief. I want them identified and the money recovered. Mr. Russo, I came here as a consultant, not. Triple your current salary, he interrupted. Plus a bonus when you catch them. Do we have a deal? Amara thought of her mother's medical bills, of the experimental treatment that remained out of reach. We have a deal. Little did she know that she had just taken the first step into a labyrinth of wealth, power, and unexpected emotions that would change her life forever. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of financial forensics. Amara practically lived at quantum dynamics, combing through years of transactions, following money trails that wound through offshore accounts and shell companies. She worked closely with Nikolai, though closely was perhaps the wrong word. He provided her with unlimited access and resources but maintained a professional distance that bordered on cold. Until the night she cracked the case. Amara had been working late, the office floor dark except for the pool of light from her desk lamp. The pattern had been nagging at her for days, a recurring anomaly in the quarterly reports that didn't match the supporting documentation. And suddenly, like a magic eye puzzle snapping into focus, she saw it. Richard Pascal, she whispered, staring at the screen. The CFO of Quantum Dynamics. Nikolai's right-hand man for financial matters. The architect of an embezzlement scheme so elegant in its complexity that it had gone undetected for nearly 2 years. Amara reached for her phone, then paused. It was after midnight. But the evidence was irrefutable, and the quarterly board meeting was tomorrow morning. If Pascal attended, he might realize she was on to him. She dialed Nikolai's number before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. "Russo." "It's Pascal," she said without preamble. A beat of silence. "You're certain?" 100%. "I can show you the proof." "Where are you now?" "Still at the office." "Stay there. I'm coming in." 20 minutes later, Nikolai strode through the darkened office, still in the suit he'd worn that day, though his tie was loosened and his hair slightly disheveled. For the first time, Amara glimpsed the man beneath the billionaire facade, someone who worked as hard as she did, who cared deeply about his company. "Show me," he said simply, pulling a chair next to hers. For the next hour, she walked him through the evidence, explaining how Pascal had manipulated the books, creating phantom expenses that funneled money to accounts he controlled through a series of proxies. When she finished, Nikolai was silent, staring at the screen where his CFO's betrayal was laid bare in columns of numbers and transaction records. "I trusted him," he said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. "He was with me from the beginning. Before Quantum was even profitable." "I'm sorry," Amara said, and meant it. She knew what betrayal felt like. Nikolai looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "Don't be. You did exactly what I hired you to do." He stood abruptly. "I need to call my security team and legal counsel. We'll move on this before the markets open." The next morning, Richard Pascal was escorted from the building by security, his company credentials and access revoked. By afternoon, the news had broken, sending Quantum stock into a temporary freefall. By evening, Pascal was in FBI custody, and Nikolai was facing a public relations nightmare as questions swirled about how such massive theft could have gone undetected. Through it all, Amara worked tirelessly alongside Nikolai and his executive team, tracing the stolen funds, cooperating with federal investigators, and developing a strategy to stabilize the company's position. A month after Pascal's arrest, Amara sat in her office, a real office now, not the temporary workspace she'd been assigned as a consultant, reviewing the latest financial projections. Despite their efforts, Quantum stock had not recovered fully, and a crucial partnership with the Japanese tech conglomerate Tanaka Group was in jeopardy. Her phone buzzed with a message from Nikolai's assistant, "Mr. Russo requests your presence in his office immediately." When she arrived, Nikolai was standing at the window, his back to the door, looking out over the city. He'd been doing that more often lately, staring at the horizon as if searching for solutions in the distance. "You wanted to see me?" Amara said. He turned, his expression grave. "Close the door, please." She did so, a flutter of unease in her stomach. Was she being let go? Had she missed something in her investigation? "The Tanaka Group is wavering," Nikolai said without preamble. Hiroshi Tanaka has concerns about the stability of our leadership. That's understandable after what happened with Pascal, but your financials are solid now, and the new safeguards. It's not about the financials, Nikolai interrupted. It's about me. Amara frowned. I don't understand. Tanaka is traditional. He values family, stability, long-term thinking. Nikolai paced to his desk, picking up a folder. Pascal's parting gift was to feed the press stories about my personal life. Exaggerated accounts of relationships, implications that I use people and discard them. Tanaka sees me as untrustworthy, volatile. That's ridiculous. Your personal life has nothing to do with your ability to run this company. In Tanaka's world, it has everything to do with it. Nikolai fixed her with an intense gaze. Which brings me to why I called you here. I have a proposition for you, Ms. Bailey. A proposition, she repeated, suddenly wary. I need a wife. Amara stared at him, certain she had misheard. Excuse me. A temporary arrangement, he clarified, pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, San Francisco Bay a gleaming backdrop to his agitation. 1 year. A public relationship that will stabilize Quantum's image and reassure Tanaka of my commitment to stability. Let me make sure I understand correctly, Amara said, struggling to keep her voice level. You want to marry me? As what? A thank you for catching your thief. As a business proposition, he replied, still pacing. Quantum is still reeling from the embezzlement scandal and Pascal's accusations about my character. The Tanaka Group will not partner with a company they perceive as unstable. And a wife makes you stable? She asked incredulously. In Hiroshi Tanaka's eyes, yes. He's traditional, values family commitment. I need this deal, Ms. Bailey. So find someone else. A socialite, an actress, someone who'd jump at the chance to be a billionaire's wife, even temporarily. Nikolai stopped pacing then, fixing her with that penetrating gaze that made her feel utterly exposed. I need someone intelligent, someone who understands business, someone who isn't intimidated by me or dazzled by wealth. A pause. Someone I can trust. Amara laughed, the sound hollow in the vast office. And you think that's me? We barely know each other. I know enough. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. You're brilliant. Your work these past weeks has been exceptional. You understand what's at stake for Quantum, thousands of jobs, technological innovations that could change lives. And you have no connections to my social circle that might complicate things. This is insane, Amara said, standing up. I'm a financial analyst, not a prop for your corporate image. $2 million, Nikolai said quietly. For 1 year of your time. Amara froze. $2 million. Enough to pay for her mother's experimental treatment. Enough to clear their medical debt. Enough to provide security neither of them had ever known. What exactly would this arrangement entail, she asked, her voice carefully neutral. A legal marriage. Shared residence in my penthouse, separate bedrooms, of course. Public appearances together. That's all. And after a year. An amicable divorce. You keep the money. We both move on. Amara shook her head, disbelieving. This is crazy. It's business, Nikolai corrected. A mutually beneficial arrangement. You get financial security. I get the Tanaka partnership and save my company. I need to think about this. Of course. He nodded, professional as ever. Take 24 hours. But I need an answer by tomorrow. The Tanaka representatives arrive next week. As Amara left his office, her mind whirled with possibilities and implications. $2 million. Her mother's treatment. A year of her life in exchange for financial freedom. It was simply a business decision. A contract. Nothing more. At least, that's what she told herself when she returned to Nikolai's office the next day and said, yes. Have you ever made a choice that seemed purely practical at the time, only to find it leading you down an unexpected emotional path? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that explore the complex terrain of the human heart. The wedding was a small, private affair at the courthouse, with only Nikolai's sister Sophia and the company's legal counsel present as witnesses. Amara wore a simple cream dress that she had purchased the day before. Nikolai wore one of his many impeccable suits. They exchanged plain gold bands and emotionless vows. The entire ceremony took less than 20 minutes. Afterward, they posed for photographs on the courthouse steps, photographs that would be strategically released to the press to announce their whirlwind romance. The story they had crafted was simple: they had fallen in love while working closely together to save quantum dynamics. Their connection had deepened through professional respect and shared purpose. Now they were embarking on a personal journey together. It was a good story. Clean, believable, with just enough truth to make the lies easier to tell. That evening, Nikolai's driver delivered Amara to his penthouse atop one of San Francisco's most exclusive residential towers. The doorman greeted her as Mrs. Russo, a title that felt foreign and false on her ears. The private elevator whisked her to the top floor, where Nikolai was waiting. "Welcome home," he said, gesturing to the sprawling space before them. "Let me show you around." The penthouse was spectacular, a minimalist showcase of wealth and taste spanning the entire top floor of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and bay. The furniture was elegant and clearly expensive, but the space felt more like a high-end hotel than a home. "Your bedroom suite is this way," Nikolai said, leading her down a hallway. "I had the interior designer prepare it based on general preferences, but feel free to make any changes." The suite was beautiful, a spacious bedroom with its own sitting area, a bathroom larger than her entire apartment, and a walk-in closet that could have housed a small family. It was also clearly separated from Nikolai's master suite by the length of the hallway, reinforcing the boundaries of their arrangement. "It's lovely," Amara said, setting down the small overnight bag she had brought with her. "The rest of her belongings would be delivered tomorrow." "Good." Nikolai nodded. "Businesslike. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, comes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. She's aware of our situation and can be trusted to be discreet. I've given her your dietary preferences." "How did you know my dietary preferences?" A slight shrug. "Background check. Standard procedure before proposing any kind of partnership." "Of course." Amara shouldn't have been surprised. A man like Nikolai Russo wouldn't enter even a fake marriage without due diligence. "I've also taken the liberty of arranging a styling consultation for tomorrow," he continued. "You'll need an appropriate wardrobe for the events we'll be attending. The Tanaka reception is next week." Amara bristled slightly. "What's wrong with my clothes?" Nikolai's gaze traveled over her simple dress, not unkindly but analytically. "Nothing, for your previous role. But as my wife, you'll be expected to dress a certain way. It's part of the image we're creating." "Right," Amara said flatly. "The image. This is a business arrangement, Amara," Nikolai reminded her, his voice softening slightly. "We both agreed to the terms." She nodded, pushing aside her momentary discomfort. "Of course. I'll meet with the stylist." "Good." He checked his watch. "I have a conference call with our Tokyo office in 10 minutes. Make yourself comfortable. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry." With that, he left her alone in her new home, the weight of what she had agreed to settling over her like a heavy cloak. Later that night, unable to sleep in the too perfect, too unfamiliar room, Amara stood at the window, looking out at the glittering city below. In one of those lights was the hospital where her mother was staying, fighting for her life with a grace and courage that humbled Amara daily. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her mother. "Just saw the news. When were you going to tell me you got married?" And to Nikolai Russo of all people? Amara closed her eyes. This was the part of the arrangement she had dreaded most, lying to her mother. But Nikolai had been clear, no one could know the truth. The fewer people who knew their marriage was a sham, the less risk of exposure. Just happened very quickly, Mom. I'll come see you tomorrow and explain everything. Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. You better. And bring that handsome husband of yours. I want to meet the man who swept my daughter off her feet. Amara's heart sank. She hadn't anticipated this complication. Of course her mother would want to meet her new son-in-law. Of course she would have questions. How had she not prepared for this? She hesitated, then walked down the hallway toward Nikolai's study, where light still spilled from beneath the closed door. She knocked softly. Come in, his voice called. She opened the door to find him seated at his desk, multiple screens displaying financial data before him. He had changed from his suit into more casual clothing, dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that somehow made him look more approachable than she had ever seen him. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. Is something wrong with your room? No, it's not that. She stepped further into the study. It's my mother. She's seen the news about our marriage, and she wants to meet you. Nikolai leaned back in his chair, considering this. That complicates things. She's in the hospital, Amara explained. Stage 4 lymphoma. The experimental treatment we discussed is her last option. Something shifted in Nikolai's expression, a softening, perhaps, or a recognition. You're close to her. It wasn't quite a question, but Amara nodded anyway. She raised me alone after my father left. Worked 3 jobs to put me through college. She's everything to me. Nikolai was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face. What have you told her about us? Nothing yet. Just that it happened quickly. He nodded slowly. Then we'll go see her tomorrow. I'll clear my schedule. Amara blinked in surprise. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He turned back to his screens, a clear dismissal. If we're going to do this, we need to do it convincingly. That includes meeting your mother. Thank you, Amara said softly. Nikolai looked up again, his expression unreadable. It's business, Amara. Nothing to thank me for. But the next day, when Nikolai charmed her mother with genuine warmth, bringing her favorite flowers and speaking to her with a respect that couldn't be faked, Amara wondered if perhaps there was more to Nikolai Russo than the cold businessman she had agreed to marry. He's wonderful, her mother whispered when Nikolai stepped out to take a call, leaving them briefly alone. The way he looks at you, Amara. I haven't seen you this happy in years. Amara felt a pang of guilt. Her mother had misinterpreted the tension between her and Nikolai as romantic electricity rather than the complicated dance of 2 people engaged in an elaborate deception. It's all happened so fast, she said, which wasn't a lie. Sometimes the right person comes at exactly the moment you need them most, her mother replied, squeezing Amara's hand. I'm just glad I got to see you find someone who appreciates you for the incredible woman you are. The sincerity in her mother's eyes made Amara's throat tight with unshed tears. This was the reason she had agreed to this charade, to ensure her mother received the treatment she needed. To give her a chance at seeing more of her daughter's life unfold, even if parts of it were fabricated. When Nikolai returned, he settled comfortably into the chair beside Amara, his arm draped casually over the back of her seat in a perfect imitation of a devoted husband. Your daughter tells me you're starting a new treatment next week, Mrs. Bailey. Please, call me Evelyn. Her mother smiled warmly at him. And yes, it's an experimental protocol. The doctors seem optimistic. I've taken the liberty of consulting with some medical colleagues, Nikolai said. Dr. Mercer at UCSF is considered the foremost expert in this particular field. He's agreed to consult on your case. Amara stared at him, stunned. She had never mentioned her mother's specific condition or treatment to Nikolai. That's incredibly kind of you, Evelyn said, clearly touched by the gesture. Nikolai shrugged slightly, as if it were nothing. Your family now. The casual statement, delivered so convincingly, hit Amara with unexpected force. For a moment, she could almost believe this was real, that Nikolai truly cared about her mother's well-being, that they were building a life together rather than performing for an audience of one. Later, as they rode back to the penthouse in his sleek black Bentley, Amara turned to him. Thank you for what you did today. For my mother. You didn't have to go to that trouble. Nikolai kept his eyes on the passing city. Dr. Mercer is a former classmate. It was a simple phone call. Still. It meant a lot to her. He glanced at her briefly. Your mother is a remarkable woman. I can see where you get your strength. The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, caught Amara off guard. I didn't realize you'd looked into her medical situation so thoroughly. I told you, I did my research before proposing this arrangement. It's important to understand what motivates a potential partner. Of course. It was all business to him. Every gesture, every kind word, every seemingly thoughtful action was calculated to further their deception. Amara leaned back against the leather seat, reminding herself not to read too much into any of it. They were two people playing parts in a performance with very high stakes. Nothing more. The weeks that followed settled into a strange rhythm. By day, Amara continued her work at Quantum Dynamics, now with the elevated title of Director of Financial Strategy. By night, she and Nikolai attended a carefully curated selection of events as San Francisco's newest power couple. They were good at it, she had to admit. Nikolai played the besotted husband with surprising skill, his hand always at the small of her back, his eyes finding hers across crowded rooms with practiced affection. Amara, for her part, learned to laugh at the right moments, to touch his arm when he spoke, to project the image of a woman deeply in love with her brilliant husband. It was all theater, of course. When they returned to the penthouse each night, they retreated to their separate spaces, the warmth of their public personas cooling into professional courtesy. Until the night of the Tanaka reception, when something shifted between them. The event was held at the Japanese consulate, a gathering of tech elite and international business leaders designed to celebrate the pending partnership between Quantum Dynamics and the Tanaka Group. Amara wore a silk gown in deep burgundy, selected by the stylist to complement her warm brown skin and emphasize her athletic figure. Nikolai, as always, was impeccable in his tuxedo. They worked the room with practiced ease, Nikolai introducing Amara to key players in the industry, Amara charming them with her intelligence and wit. But it was when they finally approached Hiroshi Tanaka himself that Amara witnessed a side of Nikolai she hadn't seen before. The elderly Japanese businessman greeted Nikolai with a formal bow, then turned to Amara with genuine warmth. Mrs. Russo, he said in accented English. I have heard much about you. Your husband speaks very highly of your abilities. Thank you, Mr. Tanaka, Amara replied, surprised. Nikolai had never mentioned discussing her with Tanaka. Please, call me Hiroshi. The older man smiled. Tell me, how did you and Nikolai meet? He has been surprisingly reticent about your romance. Amara felt Nikolai tense slightly beside her. They had their practice story, of course, but something in Tanaka's gentle inquiry made her opt for honesty, or at least, a version of it. I spilled coffee all over him, she said with a smile. Completely ruined his shirt before my job interview. Tanaka laughed, delighted. And yet he hired you anyway. I made a compelling case for my skills, Amara said, glancing at Nikolai. Despite the disastrous first impression. She was brilliant, Nikolai said quietly, his eyes meeting hers. I couldn't afford not to hire her, even if she did destroy my favorite shirt. Something in his tone made Amara's heart skip a beat. It sounded almost genuine. And when did you know? Tanaka asked, looking between them with shrewd eyes. No. Amara repeated, momentarily confused. That he was the one, Tanaka clarified, a knowing smile playing at his lips. Amara hesitated, the practiced answer suddenly feeling hollow. Instead, she found herself saying, there was a moment, about 2 months after we started working together. Quantum was facing a crisis, and everyone was panicking, pointing fingers. But Nikolai stood up in front of the board and took full responsibility, even though it wasn't his fault. She smiled at the memory. He protected his people. That's when I knew who he really was beneath the power and the money. The words were true, she realized with a start. That had been the moment when her perception of Nikolai had begun to shift, when she had glimpsed the man behind the billionaire facade. Tanaka nodded, satisfied, then turned to Nikolai. And you, my friend? When did you know Mrs. Russo was special? Nikolai was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. The night she solved our embezzlement case, he said finally. She had been working for hours, forgotten to eat dinner. When I arrived, she was surrounded by financial reports, her hair a mess, completely absorbed in her work. A small smile touched his lips. She looked up at me and said, I found him, with such fierce determination. No triumph, no gloating. Just a quiet confidence in her own abilities. It was impressive. Amara stared at him, caught off guard by the detail of his recollection. She had forgotten that moment herself, the late night when Nikolai had come to her office after her call. Tanaka studied them both, something knowing in his ancient eyes. The best partnerships, he said softly, are built on respect first. Love follows naturally when there is respect. Later that evening, as they rode home in the back of Nikolai's Bentley, a comfortable silence between them, Amara found herself replaying Tanaka's words. Respect. Yes, that was what had developed between her and Nikolai over these past months. A professional respect that had gradually evolved into something more personal. But not love. Never that. This was still a business arrangement, a temporary solution to both their problems. You were good tonight, Nikolai said, breaking the silence. With Tanaka. So were you, she replied. That story about the night I identified Pascal. I didn't realize you remembered it so clearly. Nikolai looked out the window, his profile sharp against the passing city lights. I remember most things clearly. It's both a blessing and a curse in business. And in marriage? Amara asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. His eyes met hers, something unreadable in their depths. I wouldn't know. This is my first. The honesty of his answer surprised her. Mine too, she said softly. For a moment, something hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, that despite the artificial nature of their union, they were sharing an experience neither had known before. Then the car pulled up to their building, and the moment passed, slipping away like so many others that didn't fit within the boundaries of their contract. Relationships are complex puzzles of timing, circumstance, and emotion. Have you ever found yourself developing unexpected feelings in a situation where they seemed impossible or inappropriate? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the unpredictable nature of the human heart. 6 months into their arrangement, Amara found herself in an unexpected position, comfortable. The penthouse that had once felt like a luxurious hotel now felt like home. Her work at Quantum had expanded beyond financial oversight to strategic planning for new initiatives. And Nikolai had become someone she genuinely enjoyed spending time with. Their public appearances had evolved from carefully scripted performances to something more natural. They had developed inside jokes, shared references, the casual intimacy of two people who had grown accustomed to each other's presence. In private, too, the rigid formality of their early interactions had softened. They often ate dinner together, discussing their days, debating business strategies, occasionally venturing into more personal territory. Amara learned that Nikolai had built Quantum Dynamics from nothing after immigrating to America at 18 with little more than ambition and a brilliant mind for technology. Nikolai discovered Amara's passion for classical piano, a talent she had abandoned due to financial constraints but still cherished. Small revelations, small connections, building something that wasn't quite friendship but was more than a business partnership. And all the while, the clock was ticking on their arrangement. The Tanaka deal had been signed 3 months in, securing Quantum's future and thousands of jobs. Amara's mother had started the experimental treatment, funded by the first installment of Amara's marriage payment, as she privately thought of it. The remaining money sat untouched in an account, waiting for the year to end and her new life to begin. Sometimes, in unguarded moments, Amara found herself wondering what that new life would look like without Nikolai in it. The thought brought an unexpected ache that she refused to examine too closely. It was easier to focus on the present, on the comfortable routine they had established, on the work that still challenged and fulfilled her. Until the night she found the file in Nikolai's study. She hadn't meant to snoop. She had been looking for financial projections they had been discussing over dinner. Reports he had mentioned were in his desk drawer. But as she searched, her hand closed around a folder labeled simply, AB, Dissolution. Her initials. Dissolution. With a growing sense of dread, Amara opened the file. Inside were divorce papers, already drawn up, lacking only signatures. The date listed for filing was exactly 1 year from their wedding date, still 3 months away, but clearly already prepared. Amara stared at the papers, a cold weight settling in her chest. Of course Nikolai would be prepared. Of course he would have everything in order. This was business, after all. Just business. So why did it feel like betrayal? She carefully returned the folder to the drawer, found the financial projections she had originally been seeking, and left the study, closing the door quietly behind her. When Nikolai returned from his late meeting, she handed him the projections with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. If he noticed anything amiss, he didn't mention it. And Amara said nothing about the file she had found. For the next 3 months, she carried the knowledge of those papers like a stone in her heart. She continued to play her role, to do her job, to maintain the facade of their perfect partnership. But something had changed. She had allowed herself to forget, however briefly, that this was temporary. That Nikolai viewed their marriage as a contract with an expiration date. A contract he was clearly eager to terminate on schedule. She began to pull away, subtly at first. Dinner conversations became shorter, more focused on business. She scheduled more visits to her mother in the evenings, legitimate excuses to be away from the penthouse. She stopped sharing the small personal details that had gradually built the bridge between them. If Nikolai noticed the change, he gave no indication. He continued as always, professional, courteous, occasionally surprising her with small gestures of consideration that made it harder to maintain her emotional distance. Like the baby grand piano that appeared in the penthouse's sitting room one afternoon. "What's this?" Amara asked, running her fingers lightly over the glossy black surface. Nikolai shrugged, feigning casualness though she caught the hint of anticipation in his eyes. "You mentioned you used to play. I thought you might enjoy having one available." She stared at him, trying to reconcile this thoughtfulness with the man who had already prepared to end their marriage. "This is a Steinway. It must have cost." "Do you like it?" he interrupted. The simple question, asked with uncharacteristic uncertainty, caught her off guard. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Then play something." Amara hesitated, then sat on the bench, positioning her hands over keys she hadn't touched in years. She began tentatively, a simple Chopin nocturne that had once been her favorite. Her fingers remembered more than her mind did, finding the patterns, the emotion of the piece flowing through her. When she finished, she looked up to find Nikolai watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You play beautifully," he said quietly. "I'm rusty," she deflected, uncomfortable with the intimacy of the moment. "Why did you stop?" "Practicality. Piano lessons are expensive. College tuition was more important." He nodded, understanding. "Sometimes we sacrifice the things we love for the things we need." Yes, Amara agreed, thinking not of the piano but of her own heart, which she had foolishly allowed to become involved in what should have been a strictly business arrangement. Later that night, she played again, after Nikolai had gone to bed. Soft, melancholy pieces that reflected the ache in her chest. 3 more months until this ended. 3 more months of pretending she wasn't falling apart inside. Her mother's treatment was showing promising results. The experimental protocol was working, her cancer responding in ways the doctors found encouraging. In their weekly visits, Amara watched color return to her mother's cheeks, strength to her voice. Nikolai called me yesterday, her mother mentioned during one visit. He spoke with my doctors about adding a nutritional support program to complement the treatment. Amara blinked in surprise. He didn't tell me that. He said he didn't want to worry you with details, Evelyn smiled. He's very protective of you, isn't he? Amara made a non-committal sound, unsure how to respond. These gestures of Nikolai's, the continued interest in her mother's health, the consultation with specialists, the personal calls, they didn't fit neatly into her understanding of their arrangement. They felt genuine. But how could they be, when he had already prepared for their separation? I've never seen you like this, her mother continued. Even when you were with Michael, you never seemed so connected to someone. Michael. Amara's college boyfriend. The relationship that had lasted through graduation, until his ambition had taken him to New York while her mother's initial diagnosis had kept her in California. They had tried distance for a while, but some bonds weren't meant to stretch across a continent. Some loves weren't strong enough to withstand the pressure of real life. Nikolai and I are very different from Michael and me, Amara said carefully. Yes, her mother agreed. What you have with Nikolai seems much deeper. Built on something substantial. If only she knew the truth. That their marriage was built on a contract, a business arrangement with a predetermined end date. That the connection her mother perceived was just a well-crafted illusion. An illusion that was becoming increasingly difficult for Amara to separate from her own complicated feelings. As the 9-month mark of their marriage approached, quantum dynamics was thriving. The Tanaka partnership had exceeded all projections, the company's stock had rebounded to record highs, and Nikolai's position as a visionary leader had been firmly re-established. Everything was going according to plan. The plan that would end with Amara walking away 3 months from now, $2 million richer but emotionally bankrupt. The Tanakas are hosting a charity gala next week, Nikolai mentioned over breakfast one morning. It's to celebrate our partnership and raise funds for STEM education programs. Amara nodded, keeping her eyes on her tablet where she was reviewing the day's schedule. I'll make sure my calendar is clear. Hiroshi specifically asked that you attend. He's quite taken with you. I'll be there, she said, her tone professionally pleasant. Do I need to arrange for a new dress? Nikolai studied her for a moment, something like confusion flickering across his features. The stylist has already selected several options. There's a fitting this afternoon. Perfect. Amara drained her coffee cup and stood. I should get to the office. I have a meeting with the finance team at 9. As she gathered her things, she felt Nikolai's eyes on her, felt the weight of his scrutiny. She had become adept at maintaining this careful distance, this professional cordiality that fulfilled the letter of their agreement while protecting what remained of her heart. Amara, he said as she reached the door. She turned, one eyebrow raised in polite inquiry. Is everything all right? Of course, she replied smoothly. Why wouldn't it be? You seem. He paused, searching for the right word. Different, lately. I'm just focused on work, she said, the lie coming easily after months of practice. The expansion into the European market is consuming a lot of my attention. He nodded, accepting the explanation though his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Dinner tonight? We could discuss the European strategy. I can't tonight, she said, another practiced lie. I'm visiting my mother. It wasn't true. Her mother had a treatment session scheduled, and visitors weren't permitted. But the hospital provided a convenient excuse, one Nikolai never questioned. "Tomorrow, then," he suggested. Amara hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow. But tomorrow became another excuse, and the next day another, until the night of the charity gala arrived with the tension between them still unaddressed. If you've ever found yourself pulling away from someone to protect your heart, only to find the distance more painful than the risk of vulnerability, you're not alone. Hit the like button if you've experienced this particular kind of self-protection, and subscribe to hear more stories that explore the complex terrain of the human heart. The Fairmont Hotel's ballroom was transformed for the Tanaka Charity Gala, crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables draped in silk, centerpieces of exotic orchids providing subtle splashes of color. The elite of San Francisco's tech world mingled with Japanese business leaders, the air thick with the scent of success and money. Amara had chosen an emerald gown from the options the stylist had presented, the rich color striking against her dark skin, the cut elegant but understated. Her hair was swept up in an elaborate twist, diamonds at her ears and throat, borrowed for the evening from a jeweler eager to have his pieces associated with Mrs. Nikolai Russo. She arrived separately from Nikolai, who had been called to a last-minute meeting with Hiroshi Tanaka before the event. The car dropped her at the hotel entrance, where photographers captured her arrival, their flashes momentarily blinding. Inside, she accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and scanned the room, nodding greetings to familiar faces as she made her way through the crowd. She didn't see Nikolai yet, but spotted Sophia, his sister, across the room. Sophia had become a friend over the past months, her irreverent humor and genuine warmth a welcome contrast to the calculated relationships that dominated Nikolai's world. What Amara didn't know was how much Sophia knew about the true nature of her relationship with Nikolai. She suspected his sister had guessed more than she let on, but neither of them had ever broached the subject directly. "There you are," Sophia exclaimed, air-kissing Amara's cheek. "You look absolutely stunning. That color is perfect on you." "Thank you," Amara smiled, genuine affection warming her tone. "You look beautiful as always." Sophia waved away the compliment, though she did indeed look striking in a deep red gown that complemented her olive complexion and dark curls, so similar to her brother's coloring. "My brother's not with you?" Sophia asked, glancing around. "He had a meeting with Tanaka. He should be here soon." Sophia studied her face, unusually serious. "Is everything okay, Amara? You seem tense." "I'm fine," Amara replied, the answer automatic by now. "Just a little tired. It's been a busy week." Sophia clearly wasn't convinced. "You know, my brother can be an idiot sometimes. Brilliant in business, completely dense when it comes to people. Especially people he cares about." Before Amara could respond to this cryptic statement, she felt a presence behind her, a shift in the air that signaled Nikolai's arrival even before he spoke. "There you are." Amara turned to find Nikolai approaching, his imposing figure cutting through the crowd with practiced ease. He looked effortlessly commanding in his tailored tuxedo, dark hair swept back from a face that had graced countless business magazines. His olive skin seemed to glow in the warm light as his intense gaze found hers. "The Japanese delegation is waiting," he said, voice low as he reached her. "Tanaka has been asking for you." "Of course he has," Amara replied, smoothing her hands down her dress. Heaven forbid the wife isn't present to complete the perfect picture. Something flickered across Nikolai's expression, regret, perhaps, or frustration. For a moment, the polished veneer cracked, revealing the man beneath the billionaire mask. Then it was gone, sealed away behind cool professionalism. "Amara," he began. "Don't worry," she interrupted. "I know my role. One last performance, right? Then you'll be free of our arrangement." Without waiting for his response, she moved past him toward the group of distinguished Japanese businessmen gathered near the stage. She could feel Nikolai's eyes following her, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. The charity gala was in full swing, the elite of San Francisco's tech and finance world mingling beneath crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing freely as they congratulated themselves on their generosity. The Tanaka Group had organized the event to celebrate the successful first 9 months of their partnership with Quantum Dynamics, a partnership that had exceeded all financial projections and was being hailed as a model of international business cooperation. For Amara, it felt like a countdown. 3 more months until the contract ended. 3 more months until she walked away with her $2 million and her broken heart. She smiled graciously as Hiroshi Tanaka kissed her hand in greeting, his shrewd eyes studying her face. "Mrs. Russo," he said warmly. "You look radiant tonight." "Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. How is your wife recovering from her surgery?" The elderly businessman's face softened. "Much better. The flowers you sent brought her great joy." Nikolai appeared at her side, his hand coming to rest at the small of her back. A gesture that had become so natural over the past year, yet still sent electricity coursing through her body. "Hiroshi, I see you're monopolizing my wife again," he said, his tone lighter than Amara had heard it in weeks. "Can you blame me?" Tanaka replied with a knowing smile. "Intelligence and beauty combined is rare indeed." He turned serious. "The final contracts will be signed after my speech. A momentous night for both our companies." As Tanaka moved away to prepare for his address, Nikolai's hand remained on Amara's back, his touch burning through the thin fabric of her gown. "You sent his wife flowers?" he asked quietly. Amara nodded. "Last week, after I heard about her hip replacement." Something shifted in Nikolai's expression. "You never told me." "There was no reason to," she replied, the familiar ache intensifying in her chest. "It wasn't company business." Before he could respond, Sophia appeared beside them, resplendent in her crimson dress. "There you both are. The perfect power couple," she announced, linking her arm through Amara's and drawing her slightly away from Nikolai. "I need to borrow your wife for just a moment, brother." "Girl talk." Nikolai frowned but nodded, his eyes lingering on Amara as Sophia led her toward the terrace doors. Outside, the night air was cool against Amara's heated skin. The city light sparkled below, a man-made constellation to rival the few stars visible through San Francisco's light pollution. "So," Sophia said without preamble. "Have you told him?" Amara sighed, leaning against the stone balustrade. "Told him what?" "That I'm pathetically in love with him. That the thought of our contract ending in 3 months makes me physically ill." "Yes, exactly that," Sophia replied, utterly serious. "No. And I won't." Amara shook her head firmly. "Your brother has made his position very clear. The termination papers were on his desk last week, already signed on his end." "He's an idiot," Sophia declared. "He's a businessman," Amara corrected. "And our business is concluding." Sophia opened her mouth to argue further, but the terrace doors opened, and Nikolai stepped out, his expression unreadable in the shadows. "Tanaka is about to speak," he said. "We need to be inside." Amara straightened, smoothing her features into the practiced smile of Nikolai Russo's adoring wife. One last performance, then it would be over. The role she had come to live, the man she had come to love, all of it returned to the realm of fantasy where it belonged. Nikolai watched Amara from across the ballroom as she chatted with board members, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Something twisted painfully in his chest, a sensation he had been experiencing with increasing frequency as their contract neared its end. "You're staring again," Sophia murmured, appearing at his elbow with 2 champagne flutes. "I'm not staring," he countered, accepting the drink. "I'm observing. Whatever helps you sleep at night." His sister's tone was light, but her eyes were serious. "Though I suspect you're not sleeping well at all lately." Nikolai took a long sip of champagne, refusing to acknowledge the truth in her words. The past few weeks had been torture, each day bringing him closer to the moment when Amara would walk out of his life forever. "The contract was clear from the beginning," he said stiffly. 1 year, no emotional entanglements. And how's that working out for you? Sophia challenged. Before he could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. The blood drained from his face as he recognized the newcomer, Richard Pascal, the former CFO whose embezzlement had nearly destroyed quantum dynamics. Pascal shouldn't have been able to get within 100 yards of the event. His presence could only mean trouble. Across the room, he saw the exact moment Amara noticed Pascal too. She tensed, her eyes finding Nikolai's immediately, a silent communication that had developed between them over months of navigating public events together. Nikolai moved toward her, but was intercepted by Tanaka, who wanted to discuss last-minute contract details. By the time he extricated himself, Amara and Pascal had disappeared from view. Panic clawed at his throat as he searched the ballroom. He finally spotted them in a quiet corner, Pascal standing too close to Amara, his expression smug as he showed her something on his phone. Nikolai reached them in time to hear Pascal say, 2 million. Transferred tonight, or I tell Tanaka everything about your little arrangement before he signs those contracts. What's going on? Nikolai demanded, his voice dangerously low. Pascal's smile widened. Just having a business discussion with your lovely wife. Or should I say, your employee with benefits? Amara's face was pale, but her voice was steady. He has proof of our arrangement. Emails, the original contract, everything. How? Nikolai asked, though he already knew the answer. Pascal had been CFO when the arrangement was first discussed, before they'd taken precautions to keep it confidential. Does it matter? Pascal replied. What matters is that I'm willing to keep quiet, for a price. Nikolai stepped closer, using his height advantage to look down at the man who had once been his trusted colleague. You've already stolen millions from my company. You think I'd give you 1 more cent? Not your money, Pascal clarified with a cruel smile. Hers. The 2 million you paid her to play house. Poetic, don't you think? She took my place at Quantum, exposed me, ruined me. Now I get what she was paid for her, services. Nikolai's hands clenched into fists, rage building inside him like a gathering storm. But before he could respond, Amara spoke. I'll transfer the money, she said calmly. Show me the account details. Amara, no, Nikolai protested. She ignored him, taking Pascal's phone and entering information on her own device. Her fingers moved swiftly, decisively. It's done, she said after a moment, her voice hollow. Now leave, before I call security and have you arrested for extortion. Pascal checked his phone, his smile widening as he received confirmation of the transfer. Pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Russo. He slipped away, disappearing into the crowd before Nikolai could stop him. Why did you do that? Nikolai demanded once they were alone. That money was yours, your compensation. The Tanaka contract is about to be signed, Amara cut him off, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. It's worth billions to Quantum, secures thousands of jobs. I couldn't risk that. Not for money. Nikolai stared at her, something fundamental shifting inside him as the full impact of her sacrifice hit him. She had given up everything she had earned, everything she needed for her mother's care, to protect his company. Amara. She shook her head, stepping away from him. I need some air. He watched her walk away, her emerald dress shimmering under the chandeliers, her spine straight and proud despite what had just happened. And in that moment, Nikolai Russo, a man who had built a tech empire through ruthless logic and strategic decision-making, finally acknowledged the truth he had been denying for months. He was in love with his wife. We've all had those moments of crystal clarity when the truth we've been avoiding suddenly becomes impossible to deny. Have you ever experienced a realization that changed everything? Share your moment of truth in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of transformation and emotional awakening. Amara stood alone on the terrace, fighting back tears as she stared unseeing at the city below. $2 million gone in an instant. The money that would have secured her mother's ongoing medical care, paid off their mortgage, given them both security after a lifetime of struggling. Yet she couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. Not if it meant protecting Nikolai's company, his employees, his legacy. When had his priorities become hers? When had his success begun to matter more than her own self-interest? The answer was both simple and terrifying, when she had fallen in love with him. It had happened gradually, in quiet moments that defied their contractual boundaries. The late nights working side by side in his home office, his focus intense but never dismissive of her input. The way he called his mother every Sunday without fail, speaking in rapid Russian that softened his usually sharp features. The discovery that he anonymously funded scholarships for underprivileged students interested in technology. Small revelations that had built a true picture of Nikolai Russo beyond the ruthless billionaire portrayed in the media, a man of principle and unexpected tenderness, who carried the weight of thousands of livelihoods on his shoulders. The terrace door opened behind her, and she knew without turning that it was him. She could feel his presence like a physical touch. "I've been looking for you," he said quietly. "Shouldn't you be inside?" "The contract signing is happening now," he confirmed. "Without me." That made her turn. "What?" "Nikolai, this deal is everything you've worked for. You need to be there." "No." His voice was firm. "I need to be here, with you." He moved closer, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "Why didn't you tell me what Pascal was demanding? I could have helped." "There wasn't time," she said simply. "He approached me right before the signing." "You gave him everything, Amara. $2 million of your own money." She shrugged, aiming for nonchalance despite the turmoil inside her. "It's just money." "Just money?" Nikolai repeated incredulously. "The money you earned by living with a stranger for a year. By putting your life on hold. By attending events as my wife when I barely acknowledged you outside of public appearances." His harsh self-assessment surprised her. "It wasn't that bad," she said softly. "Wasn't it?" He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling its perfect arrangement. "I treated our marriage like a business transaction. I kept my distance. I made rules that protected me from—" He trailed off. "From what?" Amara asked, her heart racing. "From feeling this," he admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "From falling in love with you." The world seemed to stop. Amara stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What did you say?" Instead of repeating himself, Nikolai reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. When he held it out to her, she recognized the termination papers she had seen on his desk. Her heart sank. So this was it, he was asking her to sign them now, to end their arrangement even before the official date. Perhaps Pascal's blackmail attempt had forced his hand. But as she reached for the papers, she realized they were already torn in half. "I don't want to end this, Amara," Nikolai said, his dark eyes intense in the moonlight. "Not our marriage, not us." "There is no us," she whispered, though her traitor heart was singing a different tune. "We had an arrangement. A contract. To hell with the contract." His voice was fierce now, his accent more pronounced as emotion overtook his usual control. "I've spent my life making practical decisions, strategic choices. I married you because it made business sense. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about business." He took her hands in his, and she was shocked to feel a slight tremor in his usually steady grip. "I fell in love with you," he continued, the words tumbling out as if a dam had broken. "With your brilliance, your integrity, your kindness that you try to hide behind professionalism. The way you remember my coffee order and leave those ridiculous sticky notes on reports. How you sent flowers to Tanaka's wife without telling me because you didn't do it for business, you did it because you cared." Amara could barely breathe. "Nikolai. I know I have no right to ask," he pressed on, "not after keeping you at arm's length for a year. Not after watching you give away everything to save my company. But I'm asking anyway. He took a deep breath. Stay. Not because of a contract. Not because of money. Stay because I love you, and I hope, you might feel something for me too. The vulnerability in his eyes undid her. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms and built technological empires was standing before her, hands shaking, heart exposed. You're right, she whispered. I do feel something. His expression tightened, preparing for rejection. I love you, she continued, her voice strengthening with each word. I have for months. I told myself it was foolish, that you only saw me as a convenient solution to your PR problem. That when our contract ended, you'd be relieved to see me go. Never, he said fiercely. These past few weeks, knowing our time was ending. I've been miserable, Amara. The thought of you walking away, of never seeing you across the breakfast table again, never hearing you challenge my ideas or laugh at my terrible jokes. He shook his head. I couldn't bear it. He reached up, cupping her face with a gentleness that belied his strength. I want a real marriage, Amara. Not for show, not for business. For us. The hope blooming in her chest was almost painful in its intensity. Are you sure? Your life is complicated, your company. None of it matters without you, he interrupted. I built quantum thinking success was measured in stock prices and technological breakthroughs. You showed me there's more. His thumb brushed her cheek. Let me prove it to you. In answer, Amara rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Their first real kiss after a year of marriage. A year of pretending, of keeping distance, of denying what had grown between them. Nikolai responded with a hunger that matched her own, his arms encircling her waist, drawing her against him as if he couldn't bear any space between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. No more fake marriage, he murmured. No more contracts. Just us, she agreed, her heart fuller than she'd ever thought possible. Real partners in every way. Behind them, applause erupted from inside the ballroom, signaling the successful signing of the Tanaka contracts. But neither moved to go back inside. The business that had brought them together was concluded. The love that would keep them together was just beginning. If our stories have touched your heart or given you a moment of escape, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support means we can continue sharing these tales of love, courage, and transformation that remind us all of our shared humanity. And don't forget to hit that like button, it helps more than you know. 6 months later, Amara stood in their penthouse, watching the sun set over San Francisco Bay. The view hadn't changed, but everything else had. The first order of business after the gala had been dealing with Pascal. Nikolai had been furious about the blackmail, ready to pursue criminal charges regardless of potential publicity. But Amara had suggested a different approach, one that appealed to the businessman in him. He wants money, she had reasoned. So let's make him an offer he can't refuse. Return my $2 million plus interest, sign an ironclad NDA, and disappear, or face charges for extortion, corporate espionage, and whatever else your legal team can come up with. Pascal had chosen the first option. The money had been returned within 24 hours, and Richard Pascal had vanished from their lives, reportedly relocating to a country with no extradition treaty, a wise precaution given the enemies he'd made. With the immediate crisis resolved, Amara and Nikolai had faced a more personal challenge, learning how to be a real couple after a year of carefully maintained boundaries. It wasn't always easy. Old habits died hard, and both had protective instincts that occasionally clashed with vulnerability. But the foundation they had built, mutual respect, shared values, genuine admiration, proved stronger than their fears. Amara's mother had completed her treatment successfully, her cancer now in remission. She had laughed when they finally told her the truth about their marriage's origins. I knew something was unusual, Evelyn had said. But I also knew what I saw between you was real, contract or no contract. Professionally, Amara had established a foundation focused on financial assistance for families facing catastrophic medical expenses, funded in part by quantum dynamics and in part by the personal fortune she and Nikolai now shared without distinction. Nikolai had changed too. He still drove his company with vision and determination, but he had learned to delegate more, to trust others, to make space in his life for things beyond business. He played the piano with Amara in the evenings, took weekends off to explore the coast, called his mother more often. Small changes that reflected a fundamental shift in priorities. Deep thoughts. Nikolai's voice came from behind her, his arms encircling her waist as he joined her at the window. Amara leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence. Just reflecting on how much has changed. Any regrets, he asked, his chin resting on the top of her head. About marrying you twice. Not one. They had held a small ceremony 3 months after the gala, exchanging vows that were genuine this time, witnessed by family and close friends who understood the unique journey that had brought them to this point. I was thinking, Nikolai said, turning her in his arms to face him. We should travel more. See the world beyond boardrooms and business hotels. Amara smiled. What did you have in mind? Anywhere. Everywhere. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch reverent even after months of marriage. I want to see the world with you, Amara. Not as Nikolai and Amara Russo, power couple, but just as us. I'd like that, she said, rising on her toes to kiss him softly. Though there is one place we should probably prioritize. Where? She took his hand and placed it on her abdomen, still flat but sheltering a secret she had confirmed just that morning. The nursery down the hall. Nikolai stared at her, comprehension dawning slowly in his eyes. We're having a baby, she confirmed, her smile widening at his stunned expression. In about 7 months. Joy bloomed across his face, transforming his features in a way that still took her breath away. This was the real Nikolai, not the controlled businessman the world knew, but the man who had learned to open his heart, to love without reservation, to build a life beyond the boundaries of contracts and calculations. I love you, he said simply, gathering her close. Both of you. As the last rays of sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, Amara closed her eyes, savoring the moment. Their journey had begun with coffee spilled in a corporate lobby, evolved through a marriage of convenience, survived betrayal and self-protection, and emerged as something neither had expected but both now treasured above all else. A love story written in the most unlikely circumstances, proving once again that the human heart follows no contract, honors no business arrangement, but finds its way to what it truly needs, often in the last place we think to look. Thank you for joining us on this journey of love, sacrifice, and transformation. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a new tale from our storytelling collection. And if you know someone who might find comfort or joy in this story, please share it with them. Sometimes the right story at the right moment can change everything. Until next time, remember that love often finds us when we're busy making other plans.